I've made a couple of these videos and deleted every one because I always get too passionate about this. I recognize that if a company is not going to hire junior devs long enough, if the industry abandons junior devs, then eventually all we're going to have is cranky senior developers who are more than happy to demand the iron price for their services. And so from my perspective, I'm looking at this as a senior and going, man, this really helps me, but it really sucks for juniors. So here's what's happening. The reason that companies are refusing to hire junior engineers, and the reason why there are no open roles for junior engineers, because companies like Meta are refusing to do so and have actually publicly stated, look, we're not going to hire juniors anymore. It's about accounting. You see, one of the things that has kind of plagued the tech industry is the difference between a competent developer and a incompetent developer. In really simple terms, that won't offend anybody. Um, the more junior developers often don't have as much experience, and they often are not as productive as senior developers. And so, when you really get down to it, a company wants to hire you for one thing: your output. And so the big issue there is that if you go online and you look at like levels at FYI or whatever, you can actually see that the cost difference between a junior and a senior is around $40,000 if you believe them when they say that a junior is worth 140 grand and a senior is only worth 180 grand. I think that's a little low personally for a senior, but maybe I'm biased. But what it really comes down to is when you really get down to it, you do the math, you realize that employing a junior isn't as simple as just employing an employee. You also have to invest in their continual growth and their ramp up. And you have to make sure that they have people around them that can teach them those things and actually have the time and energy to do so, which means you have to also invest in the people around them so that they in turn can get that growth and settle into being an engineer and become that junior engineer that they want to be. The problem is doing this is extraordinarily expensive in terms of time. And so it takes around a year for a brand new junior dev who's just out of school to really become an engineer. And it even takes mostly takes longer for boot camp people because unfortunately boot camps like to claim that they're the end all be all and they're this compressed schema or whatever. But the fact is, because of that compression and because it's so short, you miss out on so much that you desperately need. And so that is why a lot of boot camps just don't work. And I would personally consider the boot camp to be a scam, but that's my opinion. I have yet to find a boot camp that is legitimate and trustworthy that actually teaches its students the way that they say they do. So maybe I'm biased there. But from my perspective, when you look at the math, you can just do the simple math and you can say, look, if employing a junior dev at 140 grand a year, it means that they're going to have to do that initial ramp up of a year to, get paid at 140 for an entire year before they're productive, before you can actually start doing the math and figuring out what their actual value to the business is. That's just too much because you can pay the same person 40 grand more, get a senior, and have people checking in code that week. So you've got two choices. You can hire a junior, pay them 140 grand for the first year to ramp them up, plus all the associated costs of the time and effort of the team around them to be able to do that, and then hope you get a good year out of them while still continuing to pay them and hoping they don't leave because let's face it, junior engineers they like to job hop more than contractors or consultants. And so there's just going to be issues there. And so what it really comes down to is that a company can actually save money by hiring a senior over a junior because there's going to be less associated costs with the team. There's going to be less long-term costs in terms of fear around retention. and you're going to be able to actually get work out of them while they're doing their first initial 6 month ramp up. And it feels weird to say this because I look at my own history and I have done a lot of contracting consulting. And doing contracts and consulting means that I have also job hopped, but I've done it at the end of contracts and projects. I came in, I made immediate value for the company, I did the work, and then, either I left because the job is over now, or I had to turn down a really terrible offer to employ me at a much lower rate. And so, from my perspective, as somebody who's also hired, I look at this and I go, wow, these companies are in a weird spot right now because they can either spend 280 grand on a junior by paying them half that for the first year and the other half for the next year, plus all the additional costs. Let's just say it's $350,000 a year total for all of this to hire a junior. Okay. Meanwhile, the seniors getting paid, much less than that, and they're outputting, they're performing. And so one thing you have to understand is that all these boot camps and things, they sprung up as an effort to lessen the gap, but they failed and they actively oversold themselves to the point where now nobody trusts them, including myself. I'm a hiring manager sometimes, and if I see somebody with only a boot camp background and no projects, I can't trust them. And I've learned that the hard way because I've tried to do what I thought was the right thing at the time and hired the junior or give the bootstrap person a chance. And it always worked out bad for me. So I stopped doing it just to protect myself as a hiring manager. And so one of the things that you have to understand is that when looking at relative cost, it's not just about the money now. It's also about the money in the future and the risk that you're creating for other people. As a software development engineer who's a junior, you are going to take so much more investment, time, energy, and money than a senior. And that is what allows you to, after that year or so of work, go to a different company and say, hey, give me an extra 10 grand a year. And so, because you have that capability, these companies are not going to want to have you do that. Like they know for a fact they're not going to keep you. Every single time I've hired a junior, I've done everything in my power to mentor them and grow them and get them going as fast as possible. But there's also this kind of, you have to accept that you're not going to keep all of your juniors. Because what's going to happen is they're going to have their own ideas, their own dreams. And to you, they are a stepping stone on that path. And so being first at a tech company and having that big thing on your resume is huge, yes, but it's an extraordinary bar that most juniors just simply don't meet. And so, if you really want to get better and you really want to be the sort of person that is going to be able to get into the industry, I'm going to give you the same exact advice I always do in my videos. Stop watching videos and start programming.